that poses problems because it's how you deploy your defensive guys. I mean, you've got to defend the run. It's kind of like, okay, up on the run, back on the pass, and that's easier said than done. So great challenge, but a great opportunity. You know, we certainly are in a different place than what we were the last time we played Oregon. I know it's an entirely different staff, but we're a more seasoned, experienced defense, and we'll need to play well, but I know our guys are excited about this opportunity.
Kevin, sorry.
One at a time, go ahead.
With Iowa and Gardner-Webb, two teams that really didn't throw the ball a whole lot, just how difficult is it to flip the switch and face a team like Oregon that has that sort of passing attack?
Well, I would normally say extremely difficult, and this is not an overstatement, but we have a guy that throws the ball fairly well too. And so as a result of that, you know, the work that we've had during spring football and during fall camp, we do some periods during practice where we go against one another. So we've got a guy that can throw the ball vertically and put it in all the right places, and we've got some receivers. We have not been challenged like we're going to be challenged this week, though, and so that in that challenge lies a great opportunity for our players.
Kevin Prosser, I'm sure, is one of the guys who you're pleased with on defense in his last game, 5 solo, 2 sacks. What are you going to be looking for him to do in this game against Oregon?
Well, be active like he is. You know, Kevin is an undersized guy, but he plays, you know, pound for pound, one of the most explosive guys out there. He's the 3rd fastest player we have on our football team. He's a great edge rusher. I mean, you can see that speed come into play when he does get some sacks. Now, beyond that, he's going to really need to be solid against the run, and he's been an explosive player so far this season. Sometimes you have a tendency to discount his role because you say, well, a guy that size can't be that productive, you know, in a physical game, but he's shown that he can, and so he'll need to play well. That whole front's going to need to play well.
As you know, this is just one game and a lot of football left to be played, but it's, you know, a Power 5 team coming in, and it's like you said, it's a great opportunity. Is it, you know, I imagine motivation will be an issue for the players, but you know, with such kind of a big game atmosphere, is it you try to keep the emotions in check and try to just continue to do what you do, or not, or let the hype kind of get in? How do you kind of approach that?
Well, that's a good question, and you know, what's always interesting is when you hear about these differences between Power 5s and this way we look at it, there are power programs. There are power programs around the country. Oregon enjoys a great national reputation. I also know this is when we play at home at 7,220 feet with our fans, there's an X factor there. And many times you want to discount that as a coach, but we're going to leverage that. And so the best thing I know is to get this team prepared with a great week of practice and play with poise and composure and have an attitude to win the football game. And so we've got a seasoned veteran coaching staff. We've been in big games before. I can tell you this, it's great to be playing at War Memorial Stadium, and we're excited about that.
Coach, Oregon, I imagine, one of those programs you consider a power program?
Correct. You know, I think if you just look at the resources that they have and their past history playing in the national championship game relatively recently, you know, new coaching staff, we get it, they still have good players, and that's a heavily resourced program, so they're a power program.
Coach, you talked about Royce Freeman a little bit and the defense on the front seven having to play well. Do you compare Freeman with his size to anybody you guys have seen in the last couple of seasons?
It's hard to compare because you're looking at a 240-pound guy, and it's, you know, it's been a while since we played somebody like that. You try to replicate that during the course of the week. That's always difficult, but we'll need to gang tackle. We'll need to make sure we're strong at the point of attack because he's beyond being a big guy. He's a guy that's got really good speed, and he's been really productive. You know, you look at his yards per carry. I think it's close to 6 yards per carry, 151 yards rushing, and that's what, you know, when some member of the media had said, "What's the challenge?" You know, on defense, it's kind of like I spent a lot of years coaching defense. When you play somebody like this, it's like you can stop the run if you sell out to do everything you can to stop the run. Well, they've got the ability to throw the ball not only in the short intermediate places, but long term, long range. And so that's going to be a challenge for us. The good news is we feel good about our defensive players. I think we've got some excellent defensive players, and they're in position, and we'll need to have those guys show up.
Craig, with, you know, I see Trey Wood's name on the depth chart this week. You know, you integrated him a couple plays. You know, you just imagine you just can't throw a kid out there, but how how will that progression kind of be? Will it be, you know, more reps in practice and maybe possibly more snaps in games as we move forward, or how do you kind of maybe plan to kind of integrate him more as we go on, I guess?
Yeah, we sprinkled him in to see how he would do, and he did fairly well. He didn't carry the ball a lot, Robert, but he looked like he was in his element. You'll see him integrated more during the course of this week of practice. You know, we're not going to fully disclose all our plans as far as the number of carries we're going to get to different guys, but I think you'll see Trey integrated more. You know, when we try to do everything we can to generate more of a rushing game to where we can be like Oregon, where we can be pretty balanced, I think we need to do that. We've got some work to do, and we've got a short week to do it in, and so Trey's going to be part of it. But Trey is just, you know, to say you're just going to make a change there and poof, all of a sudden you're rushing for 200 yards a game. That's not the case. I mean, there's a lot of elements, whether it's the blocking, the offensive line, the tight end, play selection, who's running the football. But Trey did show, to me, in a short amount of time there, he showed he belonged.
Coach, I think 10 true freshmen have played so far this year. Has this class kind of exceeded your expectations, or have just maybe more needs popped up than expected? Or I guess, you know, what's sort of your evaluation of them so far?
Evaluation is they've exceeded our expectation. We felt good about the recruiting class. Our coaches have put a lot of time and energy and a lot of resources last year, certainly coming off, you know, time for the divisional championship changed how we were perceived. But sometimes just because you're out recruiting, you maybe recruit a higher profile player doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good football player. Some of these guys that are starting as freshmen exceeded our expectations, and that's a good thing because we're gaining experience, and we're not as shallow as what we were. We have more depth, but this is an indication when those freshmen are playing, they've got good ability.
Is there a chance with Price or even Windsor, do you have an update on them going into this week, or is it still in their same situation?
Same situation. I think Price will be back next week. We're in hopes, and Shiloh's still day to day, but he won't. I don't think he'll be cleared. I do believe we'll have Josiah Hall though.
Craig, you mentioned after Saturday that when this program arrives, you'll know it because you have a dominant defense. Where do you feel this defense is now, maybe even compared, obviously, to last year, but where it is in the 4-year process for you right now?
About on target. You know, we're making strides. There's going to be times where we'll still be tested. There's still some parts, and I won't get into the specifics, where I still look and say, we shouldn't say we still look and say, okay, we need a dominant player here, a dominant player here, but you're seeing components. I think you're seeing a defensive tackle like Johanna Gafan, or an edge rusher, as we said. The question came in earlier with Kevin Prosser or Carl Granderson. You know, a middle linebacker like Logan. You know, you're still looking for a couple other parts, but we're getting better. And how far we go this year, it'll be fun to see.
Is that 2014 game so far, you know, in the past that you can't make much of it, or I guess what can you guys take away from the experience of that game that you played 3 years ago?
Well, there's a different level of speed, and we recognize that, and there's still elements that you see while they schematically are running some different things on the old Oregon package, but you still see the speed and explosion where they're able to score a lot of points. You know, we went through the Nebraska game with a fine-tooth comb, and you saw explosive plays, and then the balance to be able to have a great running back. And so that combined with a quarterback, the last guy that we went against, you know, he's playing for the Titans, I believe. And but this guy here, Herbert, they found a good one there. He's got great promise. I think there's some questions that are on the line that I might have skipped over. So anybody that's on the conference call here, if you have a question, I'll be more than happy to answer it right now.
Craig, this is Steve Benson, the Register Guard newspaper in Eugene.
Yes, Steve.
Can you just give kind of an idea of how are you?
I'm fine, Steve.
Kind of an idea of, can you give a kind of an update of Josh and just kind of coming into the season with so much attention on him, how he's handled that, and how you kind of graded him out through the first 2 games?
I think he's improved from the first game to the second game. How he's handled the exposure and expectations, he's been excellent. You know, his role is to do the very best he can for the Wyoming Cowboys. He's an other-centered person. He was selected as a captain again. He's been engaged with all our guys, and so If you ask him this question, and I would say he'd answer it this way, and beyond answering it this way, he's really doing that. He's just kind of, excluded all the outside attention, and you hear about individual attentions. Okay, there's only a certain number of quarterbacks that are really NFL type prospects, and that gets to be a pretty finite list, and he's one of them. And so as opposed to focusing on what he needs to do to improve his stock in the NFL, he's doing what he needs to do to win for the Cowboys. I thought the first game he started out, played pretty doggone well. There was one pass where it was a pick that we were disappointed that he chose to put the ball in harm's way. I thought last week he operated the offense excellent, and we used up a lot of the clock and scored some points, particularly in the first half. So I think he's playing really well. I know that he's on the radar on a lot of clubs that are around there, but he has been able to, between the national media and all the hoopla that you hear, I think he's done a great job staying focused, and he's going to need to show up for us in big games like this, and they're all big games, but your primary players have really got to answer the bell, and he'll have a great week of practice and embrace this opportunity.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Steve. Any other questions from the media online? If not, I'll go ahead and close off my part.
Josh is up next.
Craig, I'll ask one more. Trey Woods is from this area.
Yep.
Just outside of Eugene. What can you take us through the process? Obviously, he was a linebacker. Just kind of discussions and what you saw to switch him over to offense.
Well, there was a guy that we had the last couple of years that our local media are really familiar with. His name was Brian Hill. He plays for the Falcons now. What we saw within Trey was a guy who was a big, strong guy that had multi-talent, that could play on defense, could touch the football as a receiver, and we liked his attitude and we liked his ability. And so when we recruited him, we wanted him integrated into our program, and we felt like his value system, who he was and what kind of person he was, plus his stature, really fit what we thought would be a great fit for the University of Wyoming. We started him out on defense, and as we began to look at his role, we saw a great value on special teams, and then we looked at what we were really going to need in the future, and we've always had a tailback that, within the combination of our collection of guys, there's always been a guy in there that's a 6'2", 220-pound guy that's a slasher that may not be a jitterbug, and he showed those talents during the camp. I kept on watching him, and a lot of our other coaches did as well. We integrated him in last week, and he showed some good signs. And he's a great representative of high school football from your state. We believe he's going to be a big-time talent, and we're excited about having him.